Racist cop stops black man, then learns he's the head of the FBI. It was a bright early morning in the heart of the city when Officer Jenkins, a no-nonsense cop with a chip on his shoulder, pulled over a sleek black BMW. The city streets were still damp from last night's rain, and the morning sun cast long shadows between the buildings. He'd been having a rough day, one of those days where everything felt off. Budget cuts were looming, paperwork was piling up, and the constant pressure of maintaining order weighed on him. But as he saw the shiny car zip past him, something in the back of his mind clicked. It was as if he'd been waiting for a reason, any reason to feel like he had control. He flicked on the siren, watching as the BMW smoothly slowed and pulled over. The officer's hand hovered on his holster, his senses heightened, ready for anything. There was something about the way the car looked, too flashy, too expensive for a neighborhood like this. As Jenkins approached the vehicle, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had a perfect opportunity to send a message. He'd pulled over many drivers, but this one felt different. His eyes narrowed when he spotted the driver, a tall black man in his late 30s, dressed in a crisp, tailored suit. There was a calmness about the man, something in his posture that told Jenkins he wasn't the type to back down. "License and registration," Jenkins barked, his voice sharp and commanding. The man didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into the glove compartment, pulling out his documents and handing them over without saying a word. Jenkins took them, his fingers brushing against the smooth paper as he looked over the details. The name caught his eye, Malcolm Harris. It didn't ring any bells, but the man's poise, his calm, self-assured air, made Jenkins uncomfortable. "Step out of the vehicle," Jenkins ordered, his voice steady but holding an undercurrent of suspicion. Malcolm raised an eyebrow but nodded, stepping out of the car with a deliberate slowness. He was tall, well over 6 feet, and his presence seemed to command the space around him. His movements were fluid, confident, as if he had all the time in the world. Jenkins couldn't help but notice how the man carried himself, too calm for someone he assumed would just cower to authority. "What's the problem, officer?" Malcolm asked, his voice low but firm. "Why stop me?" Jenkins didn't answer immediately. He just took a long look at the man, trying to size him up. "You know, people like you don't usually drive cars like this around here," he said, his tone laced with a quiet, insinuating judgment. Malcolm didn't flinch. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, his gaze unwavering. "People like me? And just what do you mean by that?" he asked, his words crisp and controlled, every syllable carrying weight. Jenkins smirked, feeling the rush of superiority. "I'm just saying there's a lot of high-end cars around here lately. Seems like people are trying to flaunt things they shouldn't." Malcolm paused, sizing up the officer in return. He could feel the racial undertones in the officer's words. This was not just a traffic stop. This was something deeper, something personal. "You got a problem with me because of the color of my skin or the car I'm driving?" Malcolm's voice was even, but there was an edge to it that made Jenkins hesitate for just a moment. A flash of irritation passed across Jenkins' face. "I don't have to explain myself to you," he snapped, clearly annoyed by the challenge. "Just getting a read on the situation. Now stay where you are." As Jenkins continued to circle the car, he could feel his power slipping away with each passing second. There was something about this man that unsettled him, but he wasn't about to show weakness. He pulled out his phone, tapping out a few notes, his gaze flicking back to Malcolm every so often. As he was about to demand more answers, his radio crackled to life. "Agent Malcolm Harris, head of the FBI, requesting assistance." The words hit Jenkins like a slap in the face. His eyes darted back to Malcolm, who stood there with the same calm expression. The officer's heart skipped a beat as the realization hit him like a freight train. The man in front of him wasn't just some high-powered businessman or privileged elite. He wasn't just anyone. He was Malcolm Harris, the head of the FBI. The radio crackled again, and this time the voice was more urgent. "Officer Jenkins, please ensure Agent Harris is not delayed. He's on a sensitive assignment and needs to move quickly." Jenkins' mouth went dry. His palms began to sweat. The name Malcolm Harris had been all over the news recently, but he hadn't made the connection. He had no idea he was standing in front of one of the most powerful men in the country. His stomach churned as the weight of his ignorance settled in. Malcolm stood there, arms folded, watching Jenkins squirm, the corner of his mouth twitching as he held back a smile. He had seen this before, the defensive attitude, the quiet arrogance of those who assumed their badge and uniform gave them the right to treat anyone however they wanted. The officer's face turned red with embarrassment. I didn't know, he stammered, but Malcolm cut him off with a raised hand. No need for apologies. You made your assumptions, but here's something you should know. Respect isn't something you can decide based on skin color or the car someone drives. It's earned. Malcolm's voice was smooth, but it carried a weight that echoed far beyond the words themselves. For a moment, Jenkins was frozen. His brain raced to process everything that had just happened, and he felt a sharp pang of shame wash over him. The man he had just tried to humiliate was not only his superior in every sense, but was also a reminder of everything he had missed, a symbol of how power was constantly being redefined, and how people like him, who wore their biases like armor, would be left behind in a world where that armor no longer had any value. Malcolm stepped back toward his car, his movements slow and deliberate. He didn't look back at Jenkins. Instead, he slid into the driver's seat, shutting the door with a soft click. He turned the key in the ignition and the engine roared to life. As he drove away, the weight of the moment lingered in the air. Jenkins stood on the curb, stunned into silence. His mind raced, going over every word, every look. The encounter had shattered something inside him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that it was a lesson he would never forget. It was a reminder, one that rang loud and clear, that not all battles are fought on the streets or in the courts. Some battles were won simply by challenging preconceived notions, by standing firm in the face of injustice, and by showing those who held power that it could be taken away in an instant. Malcolm had shown him that. And as the car disappeared into the horizon, Jenkins realized he had just learned a lesson in humility that would change him forever.